Hello ladies and gentlemen, FrozenStag here, and welcome to a Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones Dynasty vote. Now this will be more of a character vote at first, but eventually, we're going to the Dynasty as time goes on. But essentially this is going to be a series replacing the House of a Dragon series, and eventually replacing House of Wessex, and then there'll be a spare one eventually down the line that will replace depending on which one option that wins, it will then replace that. There is another Secret 2 Game of Thrones series coming as well, which is tied with something else I've done. But yeah, I really like the thumbnail I've done for this as well. My girlfriend did draw some stickmen actually that were present, which I thought was funny. I was going to include it in the thumbnail, but I didn't in the end. It was funny, but yeah. If I had the files, I'd show you, but I don't. And they dragon as well, and that's also amusing, but I didn't add them into the thumbnail, unfortunately. But anyway, let's begin. This is the thumbnail I made. I quite like that. It's a nice thumbnail with the Stannis Baratheon, Joffrey / Tommen Targaryen Stark dynasties, who are, of course, people will be playing as, or potentially playing as, depending on which option, of course, wins. So there's, again, I'll mention the bonus one. So I did a poll a while back, not a while back, 2 days ago, for another thing coming up with the Telltale series, and I did say if the Telltale series wins, which they have, I will do a Secret 2 Game of Thrones Forest Dynasty, carrying on from the events in the Telltale series. So yeah, as of right now, the RPG game has won as well as Telltale, so you'll be seeing that hopefully in the near future, which I'll be quite looking forward to playing as well. But on to the actual vote itself. Now, as you can see, there is sort of 3 options in one. What that sort of means, essentially, the first option, before the slash, is an option we will be playing first. So, using this first option as an example, if they win, we'll be playing as Jon Snow. Because obviously I finished recording House of Dragon, so that's, until they go up pretty soon. When House of Wessex concludes, which I wouldn't have a clue, Davon Lannister would be played next, and then Harlaw would play depending on which option wins, most likely be Jon Snow. Harlaw will then replace that. Hopefully that makes a better sense. Why there's 3 options, people might be a little confused, but anyway, here's a video to hope you understand. All my polls here are scheduled to go up at the same time as this video. Find the polls fairly easy. Click on scroll down, go to the description. There'll be a link to the vote as well as a obviously you can go to my channel, click on that, and just go to my community tab and scroll down, and you'll find the poll at the first option. The poll will run until there's a clear majority, and then after then I'll conclude it. And this, of course, will be set in the Feast for Crows start date. If the thumbnail, it's slightly obvious with Stannis and the Tommen icon, so yeah. This will be set during the Feast for Crows. Now, there's the options below. I'll go through and show off each option, talk a bit more about them, and then and that will conclude the video pretty much. And there's a bit of a detail as well for to understand the slashes, because I know a lot of people might get a little confused. But yeah, let's begin. I have put it on my phone, so I'm not going to be thinking, wait, who was it again? No. So let's begin with the first option. Now, there will be a few videos, so maybe the series won't start immediately, but there might be a few videos before doing a few sub-votes. I'll explain those at the end. I'll go through the options, and I'll come back and cover any sub-votes if I miss any. The first option, of course, is Jon Snow. Now, there's many options we can do for Jon Snow. I'll talk about what the sub-votes will be for him. There are a few. The White Walkers should be here. I just forgot to enable them when I started the save. But they will be around, don't worry. Maybe not in the, if I play another character that's died. I did save this game because I like the what's the games generate for certain characters. So I may, would keep that. Well, not maybe. So some of the games may not have the White Walkers. I don't. To be fair, I could just edit them a bit if I don't like certain things, but I try not to. If it's just a normal series. So of course, Jon Snow. With Jon Snow, of course, you have the options to of course, either reform the Stark Dynasty, stick with the Starks, or go with the Targaryens, or doing that. What are you doing?
I'll go away now.
Pranking me for a recording, thank you. Anyway, or Jon could, of course, reform the Stark and Targaryen dynasty. You have the option there. And everyone's spawning units because I paused the game. My girlfriend pranked me while I was pausing the recording to press the spacebar and everything started. Anyway. Jon Snow is I mean, he was very hard done by to the end of season 8, so don't get me started on that. But anyway, Jon Snow, I'd be very keen to play as him. And the option to reform both dynasties could be interesting. We'll talk a bit more about that in the sub-votes. But anyway, Jon Snow. So Jon Snow wins. So if he wins the vote, of course, then Daemon Lannister is the next option within that sort of category. Daemon Lannister does not start of any settlements. But we probably will grant him, obviously we have to, because otherwise the game doesn't work. But Daemon Lannister is the son of Stafford Lannister. He was actually named, I think, Warden of the West in the books, I think. And he's like one of the decent commanders in the Western Lands at the moment, since the death of, like, you know, a lot of people. So, yeah. So Daemon Lannister, I will probably give him the Castle Fang Tower, which I think would be interesting to start. Because I think that's the only place in the Western Lands that is, like, doesn't have anyone else occupying it. So giving him the Fang Tower would be quite an interesting start. Starting off in the High Lordship of Castle Rock allows us quite a few choices to. Obviously, you'd have to beat the strength of Castle Rock eventually by taking most of the places in the area. So taking over Glitterdale, the Oxcross, Lannisport, and the Steppes will be quite interesting to try and strengthen your position in the Westlands there with Daemon and of course that series will be of course the Lannister Dynasty. Because you've never played Lannister before with an actual dynasty, so that'd be quite fun. With Jon, and that depends, again, goes towards a bit more of the sub-votes once more. But if we go with him as a Stark or a Targaryen, then that'll just be House Stark series, and House Targaryen will be the name of that series. If we go with the Stark Targaryen dynasty, which we'll get more on that later, then it will be called the Stark Targaryen dynasty. Which is a bit of a mouthful, but I think it just makes the most sense. So yeah, Daemon Lannister. And on to the next character, which will be Harys Harlaw. Harys Harlaw is the cousin of the current Lord of House Harlaw, which is Roderick the Reader. Both his sons actually died in the Greyjoy Rebellion, so Roderick has no heirs. Roderick's heir is Harys Harlaw. While you do start off as a very small, a castle, you do stand to inherit Roderick's territory. Unless he loses the Widow trait and has a son, you might have a chance to inherit that. You're also related distantly to the Saltcliffs and the Greyjoys as well, or the branch of the family that isn't in charge. You also have a few other Harlaws as well, Lord Hoffo, and Boromund the Blue. Which I've actually seen it. I've seen it with Boromund the Blue. If he ever becomes the King of the Iron Islands, I think the Harlaw banner either goes blue or the Greyjoy banner goes blue. I think I'm not quite sure. But it's quite cool. I've seen it happen when he somehow rarely becomes king of the Iron Islands. He just has the Iron Isles banner goes blue, which I think is quite cool. But Harys Harlaw was quite an interesting character. His mother was a Serret, and he carries the Valyrian Steel Sword Nightfall, which is the sword of House Harlaw. It's pretty badass. I love the sword. It's neat. And Harys Harlaw is a very interesting character in the books. Obviously, rising him up to become, the whole Lord of Harlaw, and then eventually, taking other lands in the Iron Islands, eventually rising up to put the Harlaws as kings of the Iron Islands would be quite an interesting thing. Especially if the Greyjoys do succeed in taking the Reach and other territories. It'd be interesting to see how the Greyjoys and the Iron Islands become in this scenario. So that's the first option out of the way. So if Jon Snow wins, or that little option, then of course, Jon Snow will win. Obviously, the Lannisters, the Daemon Lannister, and the Harlaw. So you get the Jon Snow series with whatever dynasty wins, the Harlaw and Lannister dynasty eventually as well, which would be what that series would be called. The next option is Aegon Targaryen, who we did play as briefly in our House of the Dragon series, but at the moment you start with King Aegon of Essos Youngrip. Your goal straight away is invading the Stormlands, taking the Stormlands, and then moving against the Baratheons and taking back the Iron Throne. That is your basic abundance. Aegon is rumoured to be the rumoured son of Rhaegar Targaryen. Of course, there's many rumours, and it's been speculating for years that Aegon may or may not be a Targaryen, but it's a Blackfyre, or he could be a lowborn nobody. But either way, if Aegon got the Iron Throne, I don't think he'd reveal. If he was a Blackfyre, he wouldn't reveal that. He'd just stick it that he's a Targaryen. It would strengthen their claim to the throne anyway. So revealing that he's a Blackfyre just weakens their resolve overall, if Aegon even knows. Aegon of Essos, which would be, it's an interesting run. I have, seen it before many times. Saw one when someone became the Emperor of New Valyria, which is a whole interesting thing. Obviously I won't go that far. But Aegon Targaryen, we have done Targaryen a few times before, so he'll just be a House Targaryen series. That's basically it. And yeah, Aegon obviously taking the Iron Throne, getting on the Iron Throne, and keeping the dynasty, the Targaryens, on the throne would be Aegon's first sort of objective. And go from there, really, seeing what the hell happens. I do kind of, I really enjoyed my Targaryen dynasty, and I wish I should have carried it on a bit longer, because I did off camera, and a lot of shit happened, a lot of cool stuff happened. And I have regretted, like, ending it. So if I do a Targaryen series again, I'm going to do it longer, and we're going to go as long as we can, because I really want to see what the hell happens. And obviously with the Targaryen, the dragons in the game, with under Daenerys, it can be very interesting. Interestingly, in this sub one that I'm using, which I'm using a few, so it's hard to pinpoint which one. But anyway, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion are actually the children of Dreamfire, so they are in the dragon family tree, which has Vhagar, Balerion, Dreamfire, Meleys, Sunfire, etc. So it's very cool. So I like that a lot, really, to be honest. It's really cool. So if Aegon Targaryen wins, then he has 2 other series that will follow. The next, and this is one I really like, Peter Baelish, playing as Littlefinger and trying to get onto the Iron Throne. That'll be a hell of a series. And you start, obviously, in a decent position with Lord of Harrenhal, Regent of the Vale, and Catelyn of the Vale. Obviously, it doesn't stay the same. Eventually, he does, could marry Sansa, or he marries Sansa off to Harold Arryn, uniting the Arryns and the Starks and really bringing them over to his side, ideally, which is, I think, is what could happen in the books. Or, obviously, marrying Sansa himself and claiming the North, which is a whole other thing you can do as well. In the war against the Tullys, the Baelish gets the Riverlands, so he becomes the Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, and he gains a bit of power with the the Vale, and of course could very much take over the North. So yeah, playing as Baelish could be very interesting. Getting on the Iron Throne could be very hard, but getting his dynasty on the Iron Throne is doable. I think getting Baelish himself on the Iron Throne, could go very hard or very easy. It's difficult to say. But yeah, that would be called the Baelish Dynasty if they win, which I think would be quite an interesting series. I like the idea of it doing it a lot. I think Baelish is a very interesting character. I was very disappointed with how it turned out in the show. The books I'm hoping might be a bit more interesting, but I do think Littlefinger, how he's gonna beat everyone is gonna be very difficult. But I think him as a character is very interesting, so we'll see if we can put his master plan into action. The next character would be Davos Seaworth, who I fucking love Davos. In the show, he's great. In the books, he's pretty great as well. He's just all around a great character. A character that I think, I think he's, went for the whole Game of Thrones and didn't do too badly, to be fair. So Davos, of course, is currently on a mission to find Rickon Stark. And that sort of, I think there's a few events for that, I think. Although I never played Davos before, so I could completely be out of my depth. Davos had a few tragic circumstances. 4 of his sons, in the show, it's just 1. But 4 of his sons were, of course, killed in the Battle of the Blackwater, leaving 3, Devon, Stannis, and Steffon left. So, yeah, Davos is going for a pretty difficult time, as you can imagine. But Davos does start the Lord of Rainwood in the Stormlands. Obviously, if we can get Stannis on the Iron Throne, which is usually quite often the AI gets themselves killed, but if Stannis does get the Iron Throne, then I can imagine the Seaworths would be the house that would be loyal to Stannis for without most of the time, unless Stannis gets kicked off, or maybe the Seaworths fall out of favour with the Baratheons. Who knows? Getting Davos to Stormlands, probably not Davos, he's too kind, but maybe his son or relatives. Getting them the Stormlands could be quite interesting. They also start with the R'hllor religion, which does involve a few magical powers, so that could be, of course, interesting. But Davos himself is R'hllor, his son, his eldest son is, so that'd be quite interesting. But yeah, getting them the Stormlands would be quite good to do, strengthen our power, and just keeping the Baratheons on the throne would be the most of that series, or at least the Stannis' side of the Baratheons anyway. And perhaps even the Seaworth banner, the banner of the Onion Knight, may one day grace the Iron Throne. Who knows? But I think Davos is a very interesting character, and playing as him would be very interesting. The series itself will be called Seaworth Dynasty. I think that's fitting. I think. With that option out of the way, moving on to the third one, which is Daenerys Targaryen. So yeah, Daenerys in the Feast for Crows start date does start off Marine. I may or may not do a poll deciding if we start off her with the Feast for Crows period, or we maybe go back a bit and go to the Clash of Kings start date and go through all of Daenerys' events in Carth and leading up to Marine. Or if the Feast for Crows, we start with Daenerys full power, pretty much ready to just kick the crap out of all her enemies, pretty much. So yeah, I'll give you guys the choice. That'd be a sub vote, and I'll talk more about that later on. But that doesn't really mean there's not a lot to talk about. It's just like I'm gonna make either changes to Clash of Kings or Feast for Crows. So stay tuned for that poll. And more on that later. But anyway, Daenerys Targaryen, who starts a very difficult position. Her heir, well, she has no heir. I mean, the only heir that I can think of would be Aemon Targaryen, but he's 100 and something years old. I think usually he tends to die. No, he's still alive. But he will die of old age, because he's 102, and characters aren't meant to live that long in this game. Daenerys, of course, her children being the Targaryens, dragons. I mean, Dreamfire's apparently, shagged Daenerys, but we'll look past that. But Daenerys is a very, very interesting character. Her getting over to Westeros is very interesting, and her getting Daenerys on the Iron Throne would be the main objective. And then keeping Daenerys on the Iron Throne would be the further objective. And similar to the Targaryen thing, the same with Jon, I'll play on the Targaryens for as long as possible. Deciding who to marry Daenerys to is a whole other thing, but we'll see. But yeah, Daenerys is a very interesting character. I'd be very keen to play as her. The next option, so Daenerys of course wins. The next option is Walder Frey, which I think many of you will find very interesting. But I think Walder Frey, the Freys start off in a very difficult position. The only advantage is they have 80 something family, 84 family members, which is a lot. It's the biggest house in any sort of setting, in any game, any mod for any family I've seen in CK2. Playing as them is interesting. Walder is 92, so he probably does die of old age, leaving Ryman to take over. He's about 50, so he'll probably die, leaving Edwin, who will be playing as for most of the first period of that series, I think. Frey also comes with a very difficult bloodline, which I don't know if that's quite. I think if I go to the, I did wait to say, but yeah, you can just about read that. But he does come with a really bad vile blood of Walder Frey the Guestkiller. That's a really bad bloodline. Yes. So yeah, you have general opinion -10, piety procedures low, intrigue's quite high, so your plot power is good. But Riverman, Northman, Hillman, Craddockman, Saffron opinion. Essentially, the Northerners and Riverlands hate you, basically. -15, which is really bad. And he also has Blood of Lord Walder Frey, who has honourable opinion -5. Good fertility, though. Not that you need any more children in the family, but yeah. A lot of the Freys have some of the Freys. Quite a few of them have died in the war. But they're quite interesting, I think. I may or may not do a sub-poll for that. Basically revolving with them taking over Riverrun or the twins, but we'll talk more about that later on. But playing as the Freys, the series would be called the Frey Dynasty, and seeing how long, naturally getting the Freys as Lord Paramount of the Riverlands would be the first objective, and moving on to becoming, potentially, maybe Kings in the Iron Throne, if that ever happens. I have seen on Reddit, actually, someone who managed to get the Freys become the Emperors of New Valyria and conquer the entire world as House Frey, which is a hell of an objective. I think they did actually have dragons, so they must have dabbled with the Targaryens a bit there, I think, but they did end up with dragons, which is quite interesting. So that's House Frey. It'll be called Frey Dynasty. The next option, which is a bit of an interesting one and a bit of a different one I wanted to do, is a Sunderland. Not any Sunderland, Lionel Sunderland, which for many of you would have no clue what this is. And this is literally just a generated character for House Sunderland. But I do quite like the Sunderlands. I think they're a very interesting house. They are Lords of the Sisters and Sunderland, which is a place which has been contested greatly between the Starks and the Arryns over the last hundreds of years, probably thousands. And for many years, yeah. And yeah, it's been a constant back and forth with the Starks and Arryns over who the hell controls these three sisters. So it's quite an interesting place. But I do quite like the Sunderlands. They used to be a house in Age of Petty Kings, a sub-mon for Westeros Total War. Sadly, they were removed, but I thought they were such a cool house. But anyway, House Sunderland, mainly Lionel, in this I'm going to have him go off and start anywhere in the game. Basically, it'll be up to a vote. It'll be a bit like how the R9 are in DAC, where you have the choice to start wherever you want. I'm going to do the same with Lionel, and it won't be in Westeros. That's the only hint I'm going to give you for now. We'll come back to him later on, but the option will of course be Lionel, Sunderland, and it'll be a Sunderland Dynasty, although it won't be in the Three Sisters. It'll be somewhere else. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And so that concludes the third option. On to the fourth option. Now, of course, everyone's favourite, Stannis the Manus, Stannis Baratheon himself, will be the fourth option. And obviously the series, which you can quite imagine, will be called Baratheon Dynasty, because we're of course playing as Stannis. Stannis, of course, through law, he's got a daughter, Shireen, and that is it. That is his heirs. There is, of course, Edric Storm, but you can't make him. I don't know if you can legitimize him as Stannis. I think I've never seen it possible, so I'd assume not. Yeah, his heir is pretty difficult. He doesn't have a son; he only has a daughter. So quite often I see Shireen becoming the heir in charge when Stannis gets himself killed and whatnot. Quite often Stannis does get resurrected because he's favoured by chosen by R'hllor, sorry. So yeah. So Stannis will be who we're playing as. He is in a very interesting position. He does start off at war with the Boltons to gain either Jon on the throne, on the throne of the North, or any Stark or any Northerner to get the Boltons out. And then his next goal is to move further south, fight the Targaryens as well, who are fighting over Stormlands. Usually Stannis loses that war. He can never win against Targaryen. He just can't win that many wars on the front. The AI for Stannis is a bit stupid. It sends AI immediately south, and they tend to get themselves killed, so it doesn't go well. And then you got Tommen, and obviously his fight is against Tommen, and obviously with that series, our goal is to get on the Iron Throne. Quite often I've seen Stannis get his ass kicked when controlled by the AI. Whether or not we're any different is unknown. We'll have to see how well we do. But if we don't win, we just have to plot and try and get the Stannis' line back on the throne in the far future. Probably as Shireen, if it goes poorly. Now, if the option does win, then of course it will be the Baratheon Dynasty. I think it will be quite an interesting series, I think. I think it'll be quite fun. Playing as Stannis again, you know, I think Stannis in the books is a very interesting character. In the show, nah, he's still pretty badass. But in the books, I think it's going to be a lot more interesting. I don't think he's going to get himself killed at Winterfell, like they show in the show. But who knows? It might go a bit differently. We'll see. But yeah. I think Stannis was hard done by in the show, but I think it would have been great. But I think there is, of course, a chance in the books that the Boltons do win against Stannis, but it's who the hell knows. We'll find out when the book is written in about 20 years. By which case, I'm sure most of us would have fucking moved on by that point. But yeah, a few options for Stannis. If Stannis, of course, wins, Bronn the Blackwater was next, which I think Bronn's an interesting character. In the show, I think they used him quite well. I can't. Yeah, he's obviously in the books, but in the show, I don't. Yeah, in the show, I don't know what hell he does. Obviously, in the show, he goes off with Jaime in the Riverlands. No, he doesn't. In Dawn, and then gets Highgarden and becomes a Lord Paramount under Reach, which I think is ridiculous. Realistically, he'll be overthrown within months, but in the books, he becomes the Lord of Stokesworth, and he does, and the show did allude to this as well, marry Lord of Stokeworth. Eventually his marriage gets cancelled, and they're in the show, and he goes off and gets involved with Jaime, etc. But in this, obviously, he does start off the Lord of Stokesworth. He is married to Lord of Stokesworth. He's dealt with the other Stokesworth. Phallus has died in the dungeons, and Balmond Birch was actually slain by Lord Bronn himself. So basically, he won over the castle of Stokesworth. And yeah. And he marries Lollys, securing himself as the Lord of Stokesworth and the Stokesworth bloodline. She does have a bastard son, Tyrion Tanner, who I think she was actually raped by some peasant, and the peasant guy is rioting in the riots of King's Landing, and she actually ended up having a bastard who she named Tyrion. I can't remember offhand why Tyrion. I can't, of course, remember why she called him Tyrion. I think it might have been a reference to. I think Bronn called the kid Tyrion. I don't know where Tanner came from, but Tyrion Tanner, I think. But yeah, I'll obviously do some research why that is the case before we start the series, rather than being like, oh, I have no idea. We'll find out, of course. But yeah, If Bronn, of course, wins, it will be called the Blackwater Dynasty, which will be a very interesting series, I think. Playing as Ron, try and take over the Crown Lands, try and maybe get the Iron Throne. Hell of an interesting series, I think, for the Black Wars, so I'd be keen to give that, of course, a go. Yeah, so after Bronn, the next option would be Doran Martell. I did consider playing as the Yornwoods. I thought they were quite an interesting house as well. They started with a difficult succession as well. But I have already played as House Dane, actually, not that long ago. Well, not long ago, 2019. And we did sort of, rise from the High Lordship to becoming the Princes of Dawn. So I felt, let's maybe start as the Martells instead. And for a majority of that series, it will be basically keeping the Martells in favour with Aegon Targaryen. Marrying, of course, Arion off to Aegon and securing Martell, pretty much. Martell succession, and they have been through a bit of hell recently. Arion the Martell is off with, is doing her own thing. Maybe be heir to Dawn. In the books, I think she's going to be getting married off to Aegon. How brief that'll be, I don't know. It may be forever. Who depends how long Aegon lives for, I suppose. Or she'll be heir to Dawn. But yeah, Quentyn Martell's gone with his expedition. I think in the books he's going to die. In the CK2 game, from what I've seen, he tends to get himself killed, leaving Trystane as the heir to Dawn, which will be interesting. Elia Martell was, of course, murdered in the orders of Gregor Clegane, as well as Amory Lorch. So the Martells are no friends of the Lannisters. And recently, Oberyn Martell was also slain by Gregor Clegane, although he did kill him in the process, leaving the Cleganes, gone pretty much. Sandor Clegane is still alive, I think. He went off to become a grave robber. I'm sure he'll appear. And of course, you have the Sand Snakes as well. There is another Martell, I think, Manfrey Martell, who could potentially be an heir to Dawn should Doran's kids all die in a worse circumstance, which who the hell knows? That could happen. So yeah, House may be called the Martell Dynasty. I think it'd be quite an interesting run keeping the Targaryens on the throne, or potentially going for independence if the Targaryens, of course, lose, depending on what happens. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I've never played as Martell before, and the Martell Dynasty I think is quite an interesting one, so I'd be keen to give them a go. The final option is Tommen Baratheon, which I think many of you will be quite interesting. I think it'd be quite an interesting series, personally. Tommen has a few options, depending on which bloodline he adopts as well, which is quite a cool one. And Tommen, again, starts in a very interesting position. He's at war of 4 factions, and many more to come. He starts with a war of Stannis, the Brotherhood Rebellion, the Blackwoods, the Siege of Raventree Hall, and the Siege of Riverrun. Those 3 wars, very easy to do. Aegon Targaryen could be an issue. The Greyjoys taking over the Reach is a very interesting scenario as well. That's something to watch out for. Quite often I've seen recently in recent testings, the Greyjoys do actually win against Reach, which I think is because the Tyrells are in so many different wars. So they can't be in 2 places at once, and that involves with the Greyjoys winning. Quite often I do see the Lannisters / Tommen coming out on top, especially with the support of the Westerlands, the Tyrells. Usually the Vale tends to support the Tommen, and Baelish becomes, supports them as well. I think Bolton does as well, although Bolton tends to stay out of the war. And depending on who gets charged to the north, that could be fighting them as well as Baratheon. And of course, you got Daenerys across the sea, who may return, depending on if she wins her war of Yunkai or not. She may return and cause you some trouble. So yeah, I think Tommen's an interesting character in the books. I think he's very much. I think if he wasn't so much pushed by Cersei in his ear, being tugged about by Marjorie and other people in the guild trying to get Tommen to be their puppet, I think Tommen would be a decent king. He still may yet be a decent king. I mean, I don't know if he's going to survive. I mean, he died in the show, so it's reason to believe that he may probably die in the books. But who the hell knows? Tommen could suddenly come out on top and lead us all to victory and defeat the White Walkers. Who the hell knows? Him and Sir Pounce will lead us to victory. But yeah. Anyway. So you have King Tommen. So yeah, playing as him would be quite interesting. You have a few options. So it could be either Lannister Dynasty, or the Baratheon Dynasty, or Lannister and Baratheon Dynasty. You'll see. More on that later. But anyway, Tommen is a very interesting character, I think. I think he could be a very interesting king. It depends how it goes. And who you get to educate him as well. But yeah, Tommen starts with a few wars. Keeping him on the throne would be the main objective. And I think it could be quite an interesting series if done, in a fun way. And you have a lot of claimants to the Iron Throne to keep in mind. Aegon, Edric Storm could suddenly prop up an issue. Marcella could be a problem as well. And also Jon could reveal his intention and declare himself king of the Iron Throne. A lot of people could declare themselves independents. It's a very interesting series. It could boil up into a lot of issues, or it could boil up into a very easy series. Who knows? But Tommen. So yeah, I think Tommen would be interesting. That's why I put him on the vote. So if you're keen to be play as Tommen, I'm happy to do so. Happy to do so. Happy to do so. Yeah. The next option. So if the option for Tommen wins is Martin Osgrey, the Osgreys. Now, many of you will know the Osgreys who supported the Blackfires in the rebellion, Blackfire Rebellion. They failed, and the Osgreys had a pretty hard run. Martin is the grandson of Eustace Osgrey. Eustace lost 3 of his sons in the rebellion, as well as his daughter, pretty much. She got sent off to the capital to be as a hostage. She hated her father for it, and became a silent sister, and unfortunately then perished during the Great Plague. Eustace's wife actually committed suicide when her daughter was sent away and 3 of her sons were murdered. She couldn't take it and died. Eustace carried on thanks to the efforts of Duncan the Tall. Eustace actually brokered the peace with, I don't know if it shows you, with Rohan the Red Widow. I don't know who this guy is. Someone she was going to marry Willem. I think it's meant to be an Osgrey, I think. I don't know. I'm not sure. But Rohan had a lot of people that died, a lot of kids that died herself. She actually went on to then marry, after the Osgreys, she went on to marry the Lord Gerald the Golden of House Lannister. She had a very interesting marriage there, after his wife died of the Dreaded Plague. So she married a Lannister. She married very well. So yeah, thanks to the efforts of Red Widow, who gave Osgrey some children. She actually vanished without a trace, which is interesting. Didn't see that before. She's actually the grandmother of Tywin, which is interesting. Tywin, of course, is dead, but but yeah. Martin Osgrey. The Osgrey is quite an interesting house. They used to rule over the North March. It used to be a very powerful house, but have since not done very well since they lost it. One of their guys got sent to the wall, thanks to, I think, the Faith Militant Uprising. Had made some sense to the wall. So yeah, they were Lords of North March for about, according to the game, about 300 years almost. And have since lost it, and are now just the Lords of Standfast, and are very small in comparison to everybody else. Martin Osgrey doesn't have many traits. He's just lustful, he's not too bad, but isn't amazing. His brother Lyman is more of a diplomat, not not amazing. So don't have the best of people. Moving down to the sons, you have Miles Osgrey, who does have quite a fair bit of intrigue, but the other traits are like lowering his stats down. So he's not that great in intrigue, more diplomacy, funny enough. But yeah, Miles, not too bad. And Quentin, who has no military traits, so could turn out either really good or really bad. So yeah. They're also related to the Webbers, so you could easily form an alliance with them, being that they're your sort of cousins. So yeah, getting the Osgreys to rise from the fucking, from like nothing, is going to be very interesting. Taking back the High Lordship of the North March, and potentially becoming the Lords of the Reach could be a very interesting series for us, and that's why I quite like the Osgreys. It's either Osgrey or Roxans I consider playing, but Roxan have a Lyrical Sword Orphan Maker, which gives them an advantage anyway, and also his son's pretty good, so like I think the Osgrey, Roxan I think that's just going to be too easy. Whereas Osgrey, that's going to be much harder. I like the idea of that, so I'm keen to play as the Osgreys if they of course win the vote. The final option, of course, which I know many of you are waiting for, is Nestor Royce, which will surprise many of you. I could, of course, have played as maybe Robert Arryn or his heir, Harold, but I've already done the Arryn Dynasty, as some of you will remember. And I thought I could do the Arryns again, but instead I went for something different, and I thought let's go for Nestor Royce instead. Who controls the gates of the moon. Is quite a powerful domain, and you are under the Arryns directly. So I figured playing as them could be interesting. The Royce, I know John Royce is very easy. He has like, what, 5,000 men. He's got a decent succession. Andar's his son. He's got 3 daughters, but they could, decent marriages. Obviously, you had Robar, who died by Tyrell, and then Waymar, who got killed by White Walkers, and he got a bunch of daughters as well. I just felt Royce was just going to be too easy. Especially Jon Royce. He's already a badass, and his son's already pretty good as well. So, yeah, I just felt it's going to be too easy. But Nestor Royce could be quite interesting. Playing as trying to take over the lands around here could be interesting. Maybe becoming a very influential lord. Maybe the Royces becoming the Lords of the Vale could be quite interesting. Regaining their sort of ancient foundings when they used to be the kings of the Vale before the Kings of Runestone. Before, of course, they were killed by King Arthur's Aaron. But yeah, Nestor's quite interesting. He has an interesting scenario going on with so his wife's of course died. He's got 2 kids, Alba Royce, who's unmarried, 29, and Miranda Royce, who was interestingly married off to Byron Belmore, who is 54, and she was, what, much younger? They didn't have any kids, but he actually died in an accident, which leads me to believe, had something happened with, potentially, unless it's something that happened in the books and I've completely, like, glossed over it, but something happened to Belmore that might have something to do with potentially Alba, Miranda, maybe Nestor, potentially. Yeah, that's why I also picked his house. I was like, oh, what the hell's happened? What's happened to what's going on there? I thought of a cool story that I could really weave in to make the Royces quite interesting, potentially with maybe Miranda having bumped off her husband with the help of maybe a brother or father or something like that. Something I could make an interesting narrative out of that. So that's why I was also quite drawn to this this option for the vote. And that brings us to the end of the, well, not quite to the end of the video, but end to the options and candidates. So moving on to the next, so what the hell are we going to be doing as the sub option? So John wins. There will be a sub vote. That sub vote for John would be deciding whether or not we go with the Stark Dynasty, Stark Targaryen Dynasty, which you can form, or the Targaryen Dynasty as it is. That will be the option for vote we'll be doing. And it will basically be a decision between either one. I may even give an option for maybe John becoming, what's the word, his actual, like, his own house, maybe, if I can do it in a way that doesn't make him become a legitimized Stark, but I'll see. It might just be the only 3 options I mentioned before. But maybe I could make John a custom house, but I may make that a separate series later down the line. But anyway. Devon Lannister, there's nothing there going on for like a vote. He'll have the Fang Tower and he'll work his way up. Harlaw, again, nothing for that. Aegon Targaryen, I may possibly include an option for maybe him revealing himself as a Blackfire, and that way we may have the Blackfire dynasty. But I struggle to believe that. I think if Aegon is a Blackfire, he's not going to reveal himself as a Blackfire. He's going to keep that secret to the grave, pretty much. That's just never going to happen. Because it would utterly screw up their claim to the throne. Oh, he's a Blackfire. He's not even... It'd make Daenerys a more fucking better candidate. Or even Jon. So, that's why he wouldn't do it. Right now, Aegon has the advantage. He's a male heir. He's a son of Rhaegar Targaryen. And should the succession have gone, normally... Should Aerys have died of old age, Rhaegar would have inherited. And Aegon would have inherited afterwards. So, Aegon is the legitimate heir. So... Yeah, Aegon has the advantage of Daenerys in that regard, so him revealing himself a Blackfire is just stupid, I think. And if that does happen in the books, Aegon isn't going to say anything. it again just screws up his whole claim. Baelish and Seaworth, no sub-votes for that. Daenerys, I could potentially weave in a sub-vote for maybe Daenerys being a Blackfire. Somehow, maybe Rhaegar had an affair with Aerys shortly during the whole war. And maybe Daenerys may or may not be a Blackfire instead of a Targaryen, which I may do a sub-vote for that, depending on how I feel with Daenerys being a Blackfire or a Targaryen. We'll see. Which could be an interesting option. I may even weave an option for potentially Daenerys either staying in Meereen, forming the Empire of New Gis, or going to Westeros. I may do that as well. We'll see. Frey and Sunderland. So Frey, there will be a sub-vote because there are a few unlandless settlements, or unlanded, places that are already held by other people. So let's go through that, shall we? So Wall of Frey. So eventually, after the war in the Riverlands, when the Tullys are out and the Blackwoods are out, and the Baelish is now Lord of the Trident, or Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, I will give an option for you to play as 4 different candidates. Remain as the Freys of the Crossing. Join with the Freys of the Riverrun, because there's a branch of House Frey that gets Riverrun, which I think is Emmon Frey. I think. Yeah, Evan Frey, I think, gets that, and then Tywin and William Frey eventually become the... But he will probably die, so Frey one of those two. And then what I might do is give out 2 other regions to other members of House Frey. I probably will... I'll elaborate more on that, and I'll probably give one of them the Fieldstone or the Blue Fork, and there'll be an option between to play as either one of them, or one of them, the Frey of either Fieldstone or Blue Fork. I don't think there's any more landless regions I'm aware of. If there is, I'll add them in. But I think that's all, actually. Unless... Oh, no, Cape of Eagles. So I could add the Cape of Eagles as an option as well for a member of House Frey, which could be quite interesting. So that's what I'll do. I'll give you a couple options for members of House Frey and where we want to play as them in the vote. So that'll be interesting. Riverrun, the Crossing, we have an advantage. The Cape of Eagles, Fieldstone, and the Blue Fork will be probably won't have as much of an advantage, so it could be more of an interesting series. And starting with less power in any CK2 game leads to, in my opinion, greater fun. So yeah, that's the phrase. That's what we do for House Frey. The sub-vote will probably be a separate video. I don't know if it will be episode 0, like a prologue, maybe. But I think it will just probably be a separate video. Maybe. We'll see. And on to Lionel Sunderland. Whereas the 5 options, we'll be starting with him. So I'll go through the different options, and that, of course, be a sub-vote. We'll do a vote for that, where we start. So let's go through the different options. The first one in mind is Ibn. Is in the province of Ibn Frak, which is the place not occupied by anyone else. So we're given that, and starting off down here in this High Lordship, probably won't give them the High Lordship, that'd be too easy. Starting over in Higher Frak and working our way up to become the High Councillor of Ibn could be quite interesting, and forming our own Sunderland dynasty over there could be quite interesting. The next option is in Volantis in Little Valyria, which I think would be quite interesting. Having them over in Volantis, I could have him become a Merchant Republic, which could be interesting, or I may have him as just a feudal thing. I may edit it so it's feudal. But over there could be quite interesting in Valyria. Near the very close to the ruins of Valyria and being involved very much in Volantis could be quite interesting. So yeah. The next three options is over in the Summer Islands in Shahar, which is another place not occupied by Prince Cal. Here we can give him, if that option wins, he'll start for Jahar in the Summer Islands, which could lead to potentially killing off, becoming the princes of Last Lament, and working their way up, becoming king of the Summer Isles, and then eventually the Empire of the Summer Sea, which could be very interesting. The next few options to work through is over in Kaf, in the province of Kal, over here, which is an island just outside of Kaf, which I don't know if that's a High Lordship. I don't know if you get Joey points a High Lordship. So yeah, playing over in Kaf could be quite interesting. So very interesting scenario there, definitely. And the last option is over in UT, as well. You have a few provinces, either the the Council of the Five Forts, which is a bit like the Wall, very powerful place. We've got a province down there, or so either this place, that place, this place. No, yeah, that one, or potentially Yin, but I don't think that's the capital, so no. So either one of those places, we'd probably have him as the probably not the Five Forts. That's a very powerful region. Oh, is it actually? I thought the Five Forts was quite powerful. Sort of, yeah. But yeah, either one of the provinces over there, he'd be given. Carcosa does actually have a, or maybe Carcosa actually. I'm sort of undecided, either in Carcosa or ET. It makes more sense to be ET because he can of course sail there, whereas Carcosa is like deep within the mountains, so like getting through, you just have to go through ET to get there. So maybe less likely, but I could do Carcosa. It's quite an interesting place. So we'll see. Yeah, so that's out of the way. We go with Stannis. So Stannis, of course, is the Baratheon, so there's no sub-vote for him. Maybe I could do an option for him converting back to the Faith of the Seven, but I just don't think that's going to happen. Blackwater, no, nothing for there. Martell, nothing for there. For sub-vote wise. And the last one, I think. Yeah. The last one is involving Tommen. And basically you start off, and I'm going to quickly actually show you, because it's easy for me to, because it's something you can do straight away when you start the game. Whereas with John, you have to actually... oh, for fuck's sake. That's annoying. That's annoying. I didn't want to... fine. Okay, I just have to say it now. But, yeah. With John, you can't, like, do either become a Targaryen or a Stark Targaryen until the event crops up with the whole Tower of Joy event. With Tommen, you have an option straight away to stick with a Lannister, become a Lannister, or become a full Baratheon. Or you can become the new dynasty, the Baratheon Lannister dynasty. Reform the houses together, which is quite cool. So that option, so a subvote for that would be revolving if Tommen decides to call himself a Baratheon, a Lannister, or a Baratheon Lannister. So yeah. But that about, with the game crashing, that brings us towards the end of this video. I hope you guys have all enjoyed. I'm sorry that it's gone a bit long, but again, I wanted to make sure and be thorough with all the details for the poll, so you know exactly what you're voting for. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy. I'm looking forward to the new CK2 series, whichever option wins. I'm happy to play either. Obviously, straight away, it will be either Jon, Aegon, Daenerys, Stannis, or Tommen. All of those options sound pretty fun. Playing as Jon will be interesting. Aegon will be fun. Daenerys could be very intriguing with the dragons and whatnot. Stannis as well, with R'hllor. Tommen, with how sort of difficult it is for all the claimants, but I think it could be quite interesting. And then the options after those, again, will make for some very fun series. But that is all for now. Thank you very much for watching, and farewell.